off again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot see.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters. It is the three amigos, perfect way to start your weekend. And welcome to Keith and Steve. Mitch is on his way back to Dubai. A very emotional visit for Mitch, and from our point of view, our thoughts are with Mitch. I'm not going to say anything until Mitch makes a public statement on his situation. But our thoughts are with Mitch and George at this moment in time, very much so. But as always, we're going to inject a little bit of black and white humour into your weekend, and plenty to talk about, plenty positive stuff to talk about, and as usual, some fairly crackpot ideas from people. And that's what I wanted to start with today, because it's something that Eddie Howe had to address at the press conference, and that was David Dean's comments about shortening a game of football to 60 minutes, Keith.
I'll tell you what, I'm pleased he's not my granddad, because I'd put him in a home. He just, these people, all the American owners seem crazily driven by money and money at all expense. So I'd love to be a fly on the wall today at that meeting today. But there's people who made the name in the English game seem as though, and some of them are pundits, some of them are ex-owners, but they just seem intent on making a name for themselves by talking horse shit and doing it publicly and announcing it. I genuinely don't think these people are thinking through what they're saying. And the oldest saying my granddad ever gave us, it's not broke, don't fix it. And football's worked. It's our national sport. And it's worked playing the Champions League at the start of the season to kick it all off. It's worked where the Carabao Cup, or League Cup as I like to call it, kicks off early doors, and the FA Cup climatizes, the big boys get in the new year, and then you can book your holidays really around the final, because the final doesn't move much, and then you fight for the league, and if you're lucky you get to Europe. What's the matter with that? It's the most competitive and best league in the world. But when someone like David Dean's saying what he's saying, 60 minutes, and does he think about people? I mean, there's people from Norwich travel to Newcastle for a home game. So they come for an hour and a half, and then so they make it a 2-hour spectacle with injury time. But everybody, the Americans want to lengthen it to put rah-rah girls on and entertainment at half time and timeouts, and then you've got someone like him wants to shorten it. And I just say, you all need to go back in your box and just leave it exactly as it is.
Jacob Horse this evening, all Happy New Year. Before you start, can you ask Keith to sort his zip out, please?
Hold on a minute. It's usually Jacob. It's usually the candlestick, son. It's usually the candlesticks. You're there somewhere, son. If you have a look, there's our candlesticks.
Hold on. Now, there we go. No, is it that? That's it. There's the candlestick. In all that glory. For everyone who's a candlestick lover. What's your take, Steve? 60-minute games. I mean, this comes from the fact that as well he backed it up with a little bit of evidence, didn't he? The game against Arsenal, Newcastle played. The ball was in play 54 minutes. Yeah. And against Leeds, our game, just if any of you are particularly interested, it was in play 48 minutes.
You know what? I mean, this is what we're going to be up against. I mean, they reckon the ball's in play an average of 58 to 59 minutes a game. I'm surprised at what he said about the Leeds game. I mean, the Leeds game was a stop-start at times, but for me, the game seemed to be played at 100 mile an hour. And I thought that especially the Leeds game, I thought we fell into the trap of playing the way Leeds play, which is they like to, they just scattergun approach, running all over the place. But I agree wholeheartedly with what he's saying. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And I don't think it's broke. I think the game's a 90-minute game. We know that if you did drop it to 60 minutes and they stop the clock and all that, then what's the purpose of that? So they can have advertising, so they can have a clock sponsor and stuff like that inside ground, all that type of thing. That's what they'll be up against. And you're right, Keith. They'll find space for a 20-minute half time in that because straight away the sponsors are going to go.
And adverts.
Yeah, we've got to, and Sky will want to still fill 2 hours, 2.5 hours. So we'll have the dancing girls, we'll have the entertainment at half time. Before you know it, it could be half an hour. You know, just the sooner they get rid of these American crazy ideas, the better.
I agree with you. I agree 1,000,000% with you.
In fact,
Honestly.
make half time 10 minutes. 90 minutes, 10 minutes, and scrap time added on, and just call it injury time, and then we'll all be happy.
Or do what we do when we're bands and just swap round. Just swap round. Keep going for me, like.
Exactly. Crazy.
Absolutely.
This is what we're up against, Steve, isn't it?
Yeah, it's bonkers. It really is. And to be honest, Eddie Howe shot it down in a typical Eddie Howe fashion as well. By saying that he's not for radical rule changes, but he's all for getting Van's value for money, which I thought was great. He also said, with regards to the two games that had been mentioned, that they were both different games, and different games bring different styles. And he was right. And you're not in control of how the ball falls or how the ball goes in and out. It's just one of those things. It's part of the game. But ludicrous suggestion, as we would expect from that man. And certainly not quite got all these marbles, I don't think, these days. Arsenal. Let's talk about that game, Keith. What a game! You were there. Peter Guy says, I've seen Arsenal have been charged by the FA now for not controlling their players. Well, that'll get right in there. That'll stick right in their craw now, but after everything else. But it seemed, I watched it on the TV. I think Steve did as well. It was an amazing game to watch. I mean, it was a technically great game, and it was two managers at the top of their game with two teams at the top of their game going head to head. And as often happens in these games, it was a goalless draw. Couple of potentially controversial issues with regards to penalties at either end. Despite that, if you hadn't watched the game and watched the highlights, you would think that there was only a penalty shouted, for Arsenal and not for Newcastle. But all in all, a draw, I think, was a fair result, and a complete contrast between the Leeds game and how we all felt after that, I guess, to coming away from the Emirates with a point intact.
It is, and I think if you think you just played two games, dominated the Leeds game, and then went away to Arsenal and just basically shut them out. Some people call it bullying. Some people call it high pressing. Some people call it, I don't know. Some people from the Arsenal end have said, it's not football. But we went away, and I think Eddie Howe's. I tell you something. You get a manager and you get someone like him, and it's like in games like that, you just realise how good he really is, because there's not many managers can change. He went to plan B quite early in the first half. He was trying to press, and they were coming at us. And he just changed things around, and there was one of the probably only few intelligent Arsenal fans who spoke up after the game, and he did a blog, and he said the reason we didn't score was because of what Newcastle did. It wasn't because of what Arsenal did. It was what Newcastle did, it was what Eddie Howe did, and he did X, Y, and Z, and ultimately he got two players on their two most dangerous people. So whether if they have one player come through, and he double marked some players by changing his strategy. But there was lots of things. I mean, you go down there. You know yourself. I went to Spurs away. The difference in Emirates to Spurs ground is night and day. I was in second back row at Newcastle end, and like the roof was overhanging, so ball went in the air, you couldn't see it. So that's by no means perfect. But the thing that disappointed us most was around the ground. It's a long time since I've seen as many. The guy who does your does the little article, Steve, about going to the ground.
Paul.
He was bang on him. He wants a medal because the pub he mentioned, the two pubs he mentioned, were the only two pubs that were letting Newcastle fans in. And we were down there. We got down there for 1:30, and we were like on the streets like 2:45, 3:15. So we were really trying to get down there, the ground, and get somewhere. But for anyone going down there, by God, do your homework, because there was three of us down there. And one of the lads and his son, who was only 14-year-old, it's amazing how many people's got signs on no under 18s in. And like for a bloke taking his son to a match, you know, like if you travel in from, say, I don't know, from Southampton and you travel into London, well, your son's with you. If you want to grab a pint, if you're staying for the night, and you're a bloke, you want to grab a pint, your son wants to get himself a glass of pop, but they wouldn't do it. And then and there was only 2 pubs that we found, and we walked from the tube station, you know, right the way through. So we walked about a mile. And I was shocked. I was shocked at how many pubs turned us away. You know, they were nice. The doorman were good. They just says, we said, like, you know, like we're not at the edge to cause trouble. And they just said, no, we just don't do it. We don't have it. So that was a bit of a shock. But when we got there, it's difficult to see it as well as you did, because you're looking through players and you're not seeing how balanced the defence is. And when balls go over the top, you don't know whether the player's got an advantage or not. But for me, I was watching, and there was a lot of things stood out that you don't worry as a Newcastle fan anymore. You don't sit there and go, shit, they're going to score you. You sort of sit there and think, we'll defend this. And that must sign off. Yes, they're the most polished defence in the league in stats, but I don't think I've ever watched the Newcastle side since 1969 that gives me more confidence in defence. And we look at the sign of the players. I mean, you know, you look at some of them, Mendy and even the Freshney and people like that would come through Newcastle side, and you know, you think to yourself that they're looking at like left backs and all kinds, and you sit there and think, shit, that must be the best time to strengthen the defence when you've got the best defence in the division. It's got to be the best time. But when they play Botman, God Almighty, I mean, what's he worth now? What is that lad worth? He's you know, like if he's 30-odd million, we'd be drunk to sell for 60-odd million. But I think he's in the big numbers now. I think he must be. And Van Dijk's injured for another month. And look at his age, and you sit there and think he's going to that category. Like, there's nothing so certain. I don't think I felt as good about the centre half since Woodgate was at Newcastle, and that was shorter. But when you look at the Botman, his attitude, he hates it when we concede. You see him mouthing to people. The lad's incredible, like, and you know, people like Joe Linton just putting it about. It's just great to watch Newcastle play now. But it wouldn't be me if I didn't come on and say what I thought. I did, you know, I just thought myself, when Wood came on, I thought, well, that's the end of us. We are closing down now. And the subs he brought on, you know, like it just seemed to quiet it down, you know what I mean? And I do think we're like up top, because I think that if Wilson doesn't play, Newcastle are very short of that nuisance factor, persistent pressing, because he does really, really play the life out of the defenders. And I do think that we need to, I do think we need to get some more strength up there. And maybe it's with Isaac, maybe it's Isaac, maybe we've got it. But you know, when you see people go on and come off, and you 0-0 down, straight away I thought, God, if we concede here, that's the night over, because we're not going to score here. But for my opinion, we had the best chances. I thought when we come closer than them. You know, there was a header come off, could have gone anywhere.
As me and Steve weren't at the match, I thought I'd welcome back to the platform the man formerly known as Minder, Gary Webster, who is an Arsenal fan.
Hello, Gary.
Gary, welcome back.
Hello there, how are we doing?
Good
All
to
right,
see
Gary.
you, mate.
All right, mate.
What was your view
All right.
on that game then from an Arsenal perspective, Gary?
Well, from an Arsenal perspective, I was happy with the draw, because
Well
I think
said. Well said.
the way Newcastle have been playing, although everyone is quite rightly banging on how good defensively they are, they're always a threat up front. You know, Almiron, Joe Linton, there's always danger that they can score. So, although we dominated to a certain extent, I think if you had offered me that at the start of the game, I think we would have taken that, because it's a point. It's not, you know, if you're not going to win it, just make sure you don't lose it.
Yeah.
I think I think they're the two most improved, informed teams. And I thought it was a great battle, and it was like a throwback to the old times. You know, Dan Burn putting his heart on his sleeve and fighting for every ball from you guys. And I just thought it was a good top of the league Premiership game. Which, if you'd said to me at the start of the season, I'm sure you guys would have thought this too. If we were talking about Arsenal and Newcastle being top of the league, having a top of the league clash in January, we would have taken that every time.
Yeah.
100%, mate. 100%.
Big
I mean,
question, Steve. Big question. Gary, I don't know whether you were listening earlier, but Keith was having trouble getting into some bars. Would Keith have got into the Winchester?
Oh, no problem. He would have been a founder member.
What did you make of what did you make of the histrionics from Arteta, mate? You see Arsenal's games on a regular basis. I mean, does he usually get that aerated?
He gets pretty aerated and pretty passionate. I just think, you know what? I think if it had been a 2-2 draw, we wouldn't be taking too much notice of that. You know, I'm sure. I just think that because the game, although it was passionate and had everything, it lacked those goals. It lacked that extra sellability of the game. So I think that's when we start to look at other things that have been going on in the game. So Arteta came under a bit of flack, but you know, I think it was a sideline argument or a sideline thing that made it interesting to keep it bubbling on for the next couple of days. But I think it sets us both teams up for a really interesting next 4 or 5 weeks that come out of that unscathed. You know, we could all be going for the title. And I think, how good is that? You know, it's not City, it's not Chelsea, it's not the usual suspects. And I think there's 2 teams on the up. My concern for you guys would be next year, if you know, whatever happens next year, if we don't win the Euros, then I think the FA is going to come knocking at Eddie Howe's door. And then I think he's been a big part of the resurgence, you know. And I think holding on to him will probably be the toughest problem Newcastle will have, because I think he's done fantastic up there. He really has.
Well, why would you take a smaller job, though, Gary?
Exactly. I fully understand.
I'm not being funny. If you were backed by PIF and you've got what's happening in Newcastle, we haven't won a trophy in 55 years, a domestic trophy, and we've got the record for the biggest crowd ever for a season in the Championship, 50,000 plus. Yeah, that's where they test loyalty. So these people, you could go and get the England job, and you go down as an England manager, but at Newcastle, he's going to go down with football. And for me, he's getting backed. He's because there's a lot of, I would say, average managers have gone on and managed things like Ireland, Wales, and they've done a decent job. But there was shit in team management. So I think Eddie Howe's proven that the only reason he didn't win something big at Bournemouth was because he didn't have the backing and the funds. And if he gets in, you know, if we win silverware at Newcastle, I'll tell you something, we'll go and tie all the recruitment team from England up. We'll take them and lock them away, because he'll not get near Eddie Howe. If Eddie Howe lives silverware, he's staying at Newcastle. We'll make sure of that. And for me,
I know. I fully understand. I mean, it'll be, I guess that England job is the one that everyone sees as potentially the glory job, because if you win that, it's you're immortalized. I know he would be on the tune, but if he wins the FA Cup or if he won the league, you know. But I feel with the batch of England players we've got at the moment, it would be a very hard job not to take on. And if he won silverware for Newcastle, he may feel that he's done a really good job and he's in a better position to leave them if that happened than it would be if he had not won anything with them. But that's all for the future. I mean, if Southgate wins, he'll probably be offered another contract, you know. So, but I do think he's a fantastic manager.
If Southgate wins, I'll get a curly perm, because he's rubbish. What'll happen is Southgate will go, Howe will get approached for the England job, and he'll be in the middle of this. Yeah. It's all his people, and he'll turn it down. Somebody will come in, have their 4 or 5 years, and then when Howe's done his job at Newcastle, that's when he'll go. Yeah. I'll tell you
that could be the way.
Your manager, I thought he had either drawn into his shoes, or I thought he was on a pogo stick. I've never seen anyone bounce around. They've put a video out where he's swatting flies. They put a fly in front of him, he's swatting them. Like what he was.
Well, trust me, I can't say anything against Arteta because I was slaughtering him for a good 18 months. I was
really
getting absolutely slaughtered on Twitter.
Yeah.
And I've had to eat a lot of humble pie, and I always print a piece of like a nice bit of custard pie whenever I talk about it to say I'm still eating my humble pie. So he can do no wrong in my book now. I dare not say another word.
It's why you're a good guest. It's why you're a good guest. It is why you're a good guest, Gary, because you put your heart on your sleeve and you're a fan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you say that, though, because with Arteta, it was only, I think, if the World Cup had been in the summer and the Spanish hadn't done so well, I think there's every possibility that the shoe would have been on the other foot and the Spanish would have been coming looking for Arteta to be the new manager of the international team there. So you've got this sort of dichotomy now. You know, it's like we're looking at Howe because he's going to be successful, but it's just turned, hasn't it? Because obviously with the Spanish manager packing in and because of the poor World Cup, Arteta would have been the favourite, but his success has probably saved them the Arsenal job and not given them the Spanish job.
Yeah, but as you're right though, the more successful is with Arsenal. If Arsenal get top four, they win a trophy. You know, God forbid, they might even win the Premiership. Then of course it's not only Spain that might come or be interested or whatever, but your Barcelona's come calling, your Real Madrid. You know. Yeah. And it's the same for Eddie Howe. They're almost a victim for our clubs of their own success. But you would hope somewhere down the line. And maybe Eddie Howe and maybe Arteta are a kind of new breed that actually it would have to be a country rather than another club because, as you say, who else is going to back Eddie Howe more financially than Newcastle? You know, who's going to have a better relationship with better players at the moment than Arteta with Arsenal? You know, you can go to Barcelona, Chelsea, any of these clubs. I don't think there's the quality of players. And also with Newcastle, what he's building at Newcastle with Eddie Howe. You know, where is he going to get that time, that backing? You know, I mean, Graham Potter could be a very good example of, you know, be careful of what you wish for because, you know, unless he delivers something before now and the end of the season, I can see him on the way, which would be a great pity because I think he's not a bad manager either.
Yeah, I think everybody predicted that he was going to be in bother though. When that was a hellish risky job. But I think the difference with you, as you said there, you said if the people come calling and you talk about risk, which is very valid. But when you mention Barcelona and Real Madrid, Eddie Howe will never leave Newcastle to go on their clubs. They both.
No, I don't think he would now.
Yeah,
no.
Well, they bought 1.5 billion in debt. The only people in England that have kind of debt, your neighbours, is Tottenham. You know, You know, and that's major debt, and no manager is going to get to the top of the game, say win the title, then go to a club of billion in debt. So I think them days of us being smashed, even in transfer game, by Barcelona, Real Madrid is gone. I think it's left us.
Gary, just on Newcastle's team, I mean, anybody that stood out for you? Anybody you think I'd like to see him in an Arsenal shirt?
Well, I think Callum Wilson always. You know, I think we could do with him ourselves now if he remains fit. You know, I think Pope is a very good goalkeeper. I like Ramsdale, and I think he's a great keeper. But I think that was a brilliant piece of transfer or business. And I have to say, you know, I would be critical because of his height and how he, you'd think that, you know, someone would get the better of him. But Dan Burn is, you know, he played well, and I saw him talk after the game. And he was, you know, articulate. He was very generous about how Arsenal played and who they played. And I thought that was like a bit of a throwback to two really good teams that are fighting for the top of the league and put in a shift. Both teams put in a shift, and it was great to see. You know.
Prediction then, Gary, from you, from where do you think Newcastle will finish? Where do you think Arsenal's going to finish at the end of the season? Of course, transfer window is open. We don't look as if we can do much business because of financial fair play. Obviously, you're waiting for Gabriel Jesus to come back. But from your perspective, mate, it's, you know, where do you see the two teams finishing?
I think Arsenal and Newcastle will finish top three. I think the top three will be as they are now. I'm not quite sure in which order. I'm down at 5% now, Steve, so I'm going to wrap this up.
No worries.
And I think that Newcastle might well win the FA Cup this year.
Oh,
Great
brilliant,
stuff.
brilliant.
Gary, thank you so much for popping on. Love to you and the family, mate, and I'll try and catch up with you next time I'm down in London, mate.
Great to meet you.
Yeah, great. Happy New Year to everybody.
Brilliant.
Have a
Take
best.
care,
Well,
Gary.
up the tune. Up the tune.
Great to have Gary on. He's a top bloke. Great actor as well. Good friend of
Yeah.
mine, has been for many years. Big Arsenal fan. Big up to him for coming on and giving Arsenal perspective. So, Steve, you and I watched it on the TV, and I mean, it was just a great game. Gary's right, isn't it? It was a clash of two teams at the top, and I still have to keep going, pinching my arm when people say that, because it's 12 months ago we were fighting relegation, whereas now we're talking about Newcastle being a top team and competing at the top level. And we've heard it there from an Arsenal fan, who wasn't saying it because he was polite, but he believes Newcastle to finish top three, not top four, top three.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people seem to forget that, especially the home team, and we did it a little bit on the previous game. When you travel away, you go there, you've got a point. You kick off and start that first minute, you've got a point in the bag. And then you start to build. You see, it's expected that the home team is going to come at you. You've set your stall out. You know how you want to be for the first 10, 15 minutes, settle down. Eddie has said on many occasions, and Kieran Trippier repeated it last week, we like to play on the front foot. But you can't go to Arsenal and immediately go on the front foot because of what they have in their ammunition box. So I thought we started well. I thought we started and we contained them. And one of the easiest things you can do at Arsenal is turn it into a library again, isn't it? You can do that within 15 minutes of just killing the crowd, kills the game for them. And I thought we're ultra professional. I thought we built ourselves into the game. And we also got to remember we're doing that from the bedrock of having the best defensive quartet in the league. We don't concede goals, and we've got the goalkeeper who has only conceded 9 goals this season. So all of those little components were always in our favour. And I thought we contained them. I thought we played well. I thought we had our own opportunities. And at the end of the day, as both Gary and Keith have said, you come away from Arsenal with a point, you should be happy. You've contained the team that's only 2 places above you. You've evened it out. You're no worse off than you were when you started the game, and you've played in what was a very, very entertaining game of football. More entertaining than the game of football that was on last night, where you had the team that's sitting in 10th playing the team sitting in 2nd, and you saw the chalk and cheese difference between those two, where one just can't play football. They can move the ball around, but they cannot score goals for toffee. They can concede sloppy goals. They're all over the place. And then you've got, do we moan about Man City because they only scored 1 against Chelsea? Should they have had 3 or 4? Should you expect the team that's in 2nd place to be able to do that against a team that's languishing in 10th? Which is what they are. And this is what's great about football. Everybody has an opinion. Everybody has their own idea of how the game's going to be played. But when you kick off, that's it. It's up to the manager. It's up to the players out there. And they control the game, they managed the game, they came away with a point, and everybody was happy.
Bill, I'm just repeating what Eddie Howe says at every press conference. Financial fair play, it exists. It doesn't exist anywhere else. It only exists at Newcastle United. But don't forget, Eddie Howe mentioned it again today. I'm just going to find, because I did do the actual Eddie Howe press conference review, as I always do on the channel now. He was asked about transfers by Nisha from the BBC. And she went, is the picture getting clearer as time passes? I.e., are you seeing where you need to strengthen? And he went, don't forget, financial fair play impacts on what we can do this window. Simple as that.
I think what will have happened there, though, I think the owners, and I think like Darren Nielsen has sat down with Eddie Howe and said, look, it's a really important thing that whenever we in the press never get the chance, let's mention financial fair play for 2 reasons. One, to show the EPL and the people who govern the game that we take it serious. And secondly, to ensure that other people are being charged with financial fair play. So I think by doing it, I think it's a PR trick.
Of course it is.
And by the same token, if you go and looking at players, they talk about take the kid fresh and eater, the kid who, he's supposed to be awesome in the week against Real Madrid. Apparently Newcastle can get him for between 9 and 11 million. But there's other articles saying there's a clause now where it's 27 million. So if you sit there and say, oh, FFP is not an issue for us, we're the richest company in the world, you're going to get all the Newcastle taxes on all these purchases. So I'm not worried at all. I think when the right people come up, we'll be in, and I think we'll be the same. I don't see us breaking the bank because I think they're trying to make sure they've got space in the summer. But at the same time, if a top player comes up, Newcastle will find the money and Newcastle will find the way to do it. I think the big issue we have is that we've got revenues from Mike Ashley days of where the club charged nothing to Sports Direct, and come this summer, all of those contracts will kick in place. So I think the commercial side will start taking care of financial fair play. And I think that's what they're waiting for, those contracts to come in.
Which is exactly the reason that you've got there, that question from David. How are Chelsea spending money like confetti? They're spending money like confetti because they have a commercial department that's bringing in 4, 5, 6 times the revenue of Newcastle United. So with that commercial revenue that they're bringing in, that helps the financial fair play situation because of the divide. Newcastle are holding, the ammunition is being held back at the moment because the contracts will come in and then that'll open up our FFP to give us a little bit more scope going forward. And we talk about, Tottenham could spend 400 million. That's what they were allowed to, that's the potential that they had to spend, 400 million pounds. But they're $1 billion in debt, like you said earlier, Keith. But they were allowed to spend. Newcastle aren't in debt at all, but we're only allowed to spend 200 million. Because our commercial department didn't do any work for 14 years. That's the reason. Now we've got a commercial department. That commercial department will put the effort in and we'll start to get the good sponsorship. We'll start to get the proper value for what we're entitled for as a club that's now sitting in third in the league, hopefully moving into Champions League. And that just opens up the commercial aspect and just helps. And the prize money that you'll get and the TV revenue. The last 9 games or the next 9 games on TV revenues, that's going to help boost our FFP going forward when we move into next season as well. So it's the risk that do you throw it all in and blow it, or do you do a balancing act? And I think that's where the club's sitting at the moment. If there's somebody there that they desperately want, they'll go out, they'll do a deal and they'll work it. But if it doesn't suit the manager, because that's the most important thing. If it doesn't suit the manager, because he doesn't want to blow financial fair play and to use up the revenue for a player that he doesn't have a space for in his squad or in his first 11, more importantly, because that's why you'd be bringing somebody in. You'd be bringing somebody in because it's to get you to that next stage. It's almost the Tina Aspria situation that Keegan ended up in, which 3 years or 4 years or 10 years later, people start to say, oh, well, that's why we never did this, and that's why we bought Tino, that mucked up the way that the team played, etc. So, there's all of those type of things that, that'll be thrown around and thrown in the mix. But if somebody appears and somebody becomes available, and it's somebody that Eddie Howe's desperately feels as though can fit in, I think, most importantly, into his first 11, then I think they will go for it. If it's not, it'll be a squad player because somebody else is moving out.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what he said today. Again, just sorry, Keith, before you chip in, he just said, look, we're going to look at things, we're going to analyze things on a day-to-day basis, and things could change. He said there was never going to be any early business in the window on this occasion. However, we'll have to take stock because the squad at this moment in time has been depleted with the injuries to John Joe and Target. And from his perspective, he's not happy with what he's got in the midfield. He did say he wasn't going to let Anderson go out on loan at all. He wouldn't be leaving. And he also made a big point about Ryan Fraser, who we all expect to move on in this window. Said he is training and doing his best to get back into that match day squad. He's not going anywhere either. So unless someone comes in the midfield, and we've been talking on this show, going back to last Friday, me, Keith, and Steve, we're talking with Mitch about priority being a number 6 in the midfield. Until they get somebody coming in, they will not let anybody go out. But yeah, go on, Keith. What were you going to say, mate?
Yeah, when they talk about Chelsea, some people say, how can they get away with it? And there was an article which we covered a few shows ago to say that the sort of figures where an average Chelsea fan spend. I mean, it's just divided by the number of people that go to the game and the revenue they get on a match day, but divided by each head per se, Chelsea's spend per person on a match day is £1,800. Against Newcastle's, it's 375. Now you could say, well, I don't spend 375, but you've got the corporate boxes to think about, and the corporate package of Chelsea will dwarf Newcastle's. But it's that spend that comes in on a match day is, I think, 5 times Newcastle's. Steve just covered that there. But the big thing that we don't realise is before they brought FFP in, Abramovich, they didn't account for where his money come from, let alone how he got into Chelsea. But it only came out after when war broke out, really. But when you look at that, he allowed them to go and buy players. So if I named 4 for you, just to top your head, Gallagher, we went after him in a big way. Pulisic, Hudson-Odoi, Calvert-Lewin, all those people. And there's another 20 of them at Chelsea. Chelsea's got an absolute... So that's why you see Chelsea and Man City send 7 and 8 people out, kids, loaning them out to play in different leagues and all the rest of it. A lot of them go abroad. A lot of the Chelsea players go abroad. But to put it in perspective, where it goes tits up is you look at Hudson-Odoi, and they can't place him. They can't get him on loan anywhere because he's apparently on 150,000 a week. That's more than Bruno. So Newcastle are in that game now where we're not trying to get kids like Goal and like, Matthias Brandt and people like that. You're trying to get those kids who will be, Goal was less than $1 million. The young kid at Sun, 15-year-old, we built him between 2.5 and 3.5 million. But there's a lad in Brazil they're looking at, which is circa 12 million. When you bring them in, they don't necessarily get straight in. They haven't got Dan Burn attitude the day they arrive. But when you're Chelsea's and Man City's, you can sense 6 and 7 or 8 of them out. And they come back better players. But look at Pulisic. How much is Pulisic? He's 50, 60 million or something?
8 million, yeah.
And that kind of money. And now he would only go for probably 30 million. So they lose on all these people. But a lot of those young'uns who are like the kids we buy now make money and they sell them. You might think, well, he sold him, he's just 30 million. But if you brought him for 2 or 3, all that goes in favour of Chelsea. So as well as having 5 times more sponsors and 5 times more match money, they've probably got 10 times more revenue from players they sell than what we have. It's a long time since we sold a player for a lot of money. And if you cast your mind back, you had your Carlos Sissoko, people like that. We don't often get a shed load of money for a player. You know what I mean? It's Chelsea and these teams, do trade money. Man City brought a cracking player from Liverpool and sold him to Chelsea for mega money. You know what I mean? And all that goes in favour of Man City's FFP. We haven't got player sales. We haven't got advertising. We haven't got a ground name. We haven't got shirt sponsors of any ilk. The only thing we've got probably now is new. That's probably the only deal we've got that's going to last the journey. But it's all coming. I reckon it's going to take 2 years to get the monetary side and be able to spend what we want. I think we'll spend in January. I think we'll spend in the summer much bigger.
Yeah, I think we will 100%. But I think it's very wise, and Eddie Howe keeps mentioning financial fair play, and I agree with the lads. I do believe it is part of a media strategy. And there's a lot of people in the chat, too many to mention, have said Eddie's not going to come out and say, well, we're going to spend 200 million on X, Y, and Z, which is very true. Okay, as always on a Friday night, we have got plenty to get through. I want to go through the
dogs.
Well, not going to go through the dogs yet. Yeah. I'm going to go through John's little quiz that he does. We've got over 500 watching, so now seems a good time to do it. This is for 2 tickets for the Steve Howie event, which is coming up in February in the Irish Centre. 2 tickets to come along to the event. You'll meet quite a few of the people from NUFC Matters. I'm sure those people who are in the chat on a regular basis. But there we go. Steve Howie, Friday the 24th of February, Tyneside Irish Centre. And get yourself along. It'll be a cracking night. If you want to buy tickets, get yourself onto Voucher. There are some available on there. But John's quiz was as follows. November the 12th, 1966. 135 League and Cup goals. FA Youth Cup winner 1985. Now, the question, which you have to put an answer in the chat to, and it'll be the first person that John picks out as the winner who will get the 2 tickets, is this. In 1991, the player suggested was signed by Chelsea. What was the fee? So the answer isn't Joe Allen. In 1991, the player suggested was signed by Chelsea. What was the fee? Okay, get the fee over in the chat, and we will get John on the case. He'll let us know who wins the prize. Good luck, everyone in the chat, and we will see the winners at the event. Don't forget as well, the Pele Peter Beardsley t-shirt is up on my Twitter at Steve Wraith. Place your bid underneath the pinned post at Steve Wraith, and you could win that. Steve Bennett's got a bid in, so that is at £100. All proceeds for that will be going to the food bank. Get yourself onto there. Okay, our first large section is Tweet of the Week. And as often happens with these, they follow what's been going on during the week, usually, thanks to Zara for her usual selection. 2022 has been rough on all of us. Jennifer Aniston. And 2023, I'm not going to hurt you. Me, stay away from me. Yes, I think we all get that feeling sometimes on New Year's Eve, to be perfectly honest. This one from Jake, the movie Zardoz takes place in 2023, so get ready for everyone to start dressing like this.
Oh, dear me.
Steve, got your chaps ready? Might get chap legs wearing them. Yeah. Mick Gilchrist, Tweet of the Week contender. He says Newcastle are the first team to stop Arsenal from scoring in the Premier League since Newcastle. Yes,
correct.
Brilliant.
Great stat that. Needless to say, Arteta came in for a bit of stick on the timeline this week. We had that one. And this one, can't wait for Arteta to bring his team to St James's Park in May. Thanks to David Taylor. And this one from our very own John Justice Allen. NUFC don't roll over anymore, and the supposed Big Six don't like it. Tried and failed to block our takeover, and now we're going to make them pay. Managers having breakdowns, owners bailing out, while Eddie is as calm as a cucumber. And there's Arteta with his dummy. Thank you for that, John. I love this one from Lee. Well, at least we all know now what God created on the 7th day.
Yes, well done, Lee.
Big Sven Botman. And Laurie Alsop says, apologies on behalf of all Newcastle fans for Byrne Joe Linton having the temerity to mark an opponent. This came off the back of this tweet, which says, Saka's targeted all game by the same 3 Newcastle players, Willock, Byrne and Joe Linton. And as a result, he's barely able to get into the game and is swamped with every touch. While this isn't necessarily illegal, it's against the spirit of the game, which Madeley cast an eye over. Wow. Jesus. And we had this one as well. Ban defending, said David Pick to that. Very good. Yeah, it's a good thread, that, if you get a chance to look at it. This one, Arsenal fans react to failing to score last night. And this was great. Psst, Arteta dyes his hair. Pass it on. From Anthem. This from Neil B. It appears that there is now a groundswell of opinion that urgent action needs to be taken regarding players holding on to opposing players in the box and penalties not being given after it's happened for the first time ever in an English Premier League game last night. And Arsenal didn't get a penalty. Norman goes, what? They should do something about it. Brilliant. Great bit of sarcasm there. And this, James Bridgewood, he's featured on this show before, sent me this. A bit of poetry, and Jimmy's brilliant at the stuff that he does. The sternest test. To London town, the sternest test. We squared up the Premier's best. The wind was swirling, rain did pour. A cold, bleak evening lay in store. Expansive play right from the start. They came at us with flair and heart. So much at stake, they pressed us hard. Though Saka and through Odegaard. But after 10, we calmed things down and neatly passed the ball around. A clash of heads, Joe's seeing stars, but soon shakes off his battle scar. A game of chess at breakneck speed, but neither side could take the lead. A looping header, hearts in mouths, we held our breaths, it came to nought. It ebbed and flowed until the break, mutual respect, so much at stake. Then a probing run, a slide rule pass, only to fluff our lines, alas. The locals voiced concerns aloud. Not quite that buzzing, happy crowd. More open now, less cut and thrust. 3 points to both sides was a must. They cranked it up towards the end, but we know just how to defend. We held our nerves and held the line. The road to Europe clearly signed. A point away to the champs elect. We'll all take that, I do suspect. Jimmy, great stuff, mate. Thanks for sending that over. Very good local poet and does a lot of Newcastle stuff. Henry Winter goes, Mikel Arteta having a busy half, managing and refereeing. Malcolm short at the end there. Arteta's a prick. And this one, this was great. Even if the score was 14-0, was always next goal the winner when it came to going home.
That's true.
Lads of a certain vintage will appreciate that. After that, no one can say Brentford are a one-trick Tony, said Joanna.
Very good. Very good,
Joanna. And my mate went to the Everton game last night and stayed to the final whistle to beat the traffic.
700 million.
This one as well. Vince Smith, he says, for tweet of the week. Sorry if we missed any orders tonight. We've just had this guy start. Darwin Núñez. This one, a good bargain, kid, says Stacey. She's pointing at the sign there. Bruno, you can have my mum for your top. And Stephen Kennedy on Facebook, get onto our Facebook page. What's for dinner, Dad? Wookie steak. Is it any good? It's a little chewy.
Oh, dear me.
Excellent. This was good. Zara sent us this one, and Kenny Ranson. Harry Kane, age 22, and as opposed to age 29. And as you can see, he's won nothing apart from the Audi Cup. Yeah.
I've never heard the Audi Cup, have you?
It was probably some bizarre cup in a foreign land, which nobody's ever heard of. Jamal Lascelles has not played a single minute of Premier League football in our previous 4 games, but has still picked up 2 yellow cards. Leader on and off the pitch, said Teen Army. A few people pointing that out this week. New business venture, asks Andy.
Tres Amigos. Brilliant, that.
Sadly not, Andy. Sadly not. There is one in Tenerife as well, I've noticed. The Three Amigos, it's called, with a microphone next to it. The little cheats. Now, I'm not going to attempt to sing this, which Julie will be over the moon about. The Holly and the Ivan, to the tune of Vogue. Sam Smith, Jack Monroe, Maidley, hell no. That was nearly singing, but I can see where you're coming from. That's quite a technical one to get right, but it does sound a little bit like Vogue. Leicester Transfer Centre. Frank Chipper got them with a kipper with this. He went, relegation candidates Leicester City are only willing to sell James Maddison and a cash plus goalkeeper with Premier League experience deal. And the Leicester Transfer Centre goes, really worrying to read on the day. Recall Martin Dubravka. The only thing is that when I read this back like this morning when I put it up there, is that Big Frank now as a Leicester fan? I think it is. I think he's just playing with everybody now. Big Frank Chipper below, Big Frank N is the Leicester Transfer Centre. Very clever, but very funny, and it did get a few bites. Eric Sensational put this out there. What if Dubravka only joined us to tell Newcastle all of Ten Hag's tactics? Why would they randomly call him back when we're about to overtake them in the league? They've already got 4 senior goalkeepers in their squad. Paranoia drifting now into the other fans' ranks. Can't wait to see this trophy, says Graham Ball. Harry Kane becomes the first player to score 10 or more Premier League goals on six different days of the week. God, they come up with some crap, don't they? Tim put this out. Generally don't think it's long until a member of the Big Six briefs about a completely false target just to see if Big Todd Bowley comes charging in with a counter offer.
I think he will as well.
I think Newcastle's already started that, mate.
Me too. Ed Morris says the worry here is that Villa will waste time so hard it actually sends us back to 2022, which I thought was quite funny. This is just great from Fun88. NUFC are unbeaten in 15 games. Read it and soak it in, Newcastle fans. That's a joy to behold that. This one from Laura Forrest. Dear Sky Football, so sorry you had to come to Nottingham and watch us rob precious Chelsea of their rightful 3 points, but could you at least try to talk about us for at least 10 seconds, even 5 seconds? Very good point, Laura. It happened to us as well. And Rachel says, currently in the bath, looking like that walrus that rocked up at Scarborough for a rest after Christmas.
I hope you're not. I hope you're not doing in the bath what the walrus is doing on the beach.
Again, some of the things that came out in that thread are quite interesting. Shithousing is my favourite part of football, says Zara. At the minute, we're a peak shithouse because we're rich enough to buy anyone, but still play a team full of scrappy underdogs. It really is a thing of beauty.
That's so true. So true, Zara. So true.
This one as well, Keith asked me to put this up. Hi, Keith. Great to start new year. Here's my mate's dad. He was 100, and I wonder if you can get Steve W. to give a shout out on the Amigos, Bill Buddle. Big shout out to Bill. Happy 100th birthday, kidda. What a great photo. And I tell you what, I bet you've got more tails than George Mitchell.
But you, Peter Jane has to support that up. What a thing to get a shirt. And they had a video of him as well, but a 100-year-old. And he was so intent on getting it to the face that it was brilliant. I'd like a presentation from in the club.
Well, I tell you what, Keith, if you get an opportunity, and if Bill is up for it, maybe get him on the Amigos one week, because I'd love to ask him some questions about his time supporting Newcastle. So get him on. If you can get him on, it would be great to have him on, because that would be fantastic. Thanks to Stephen Kennedy for this one. Any drugs, alcohol? No, thanks. I've got everything. And the winning tweet this week is this one. Botman would piss the bed and still have a clean sheet. Brilliant. That should be a t-shirt. John Justice Allen.
Sure, come on, Mr. Allen.
Tweet of the week. Okay, lots of questions coming in. We try to get through them, but it's nigh on impossible because we've got that much to get through on the show on a Friday night. I'm going to go with this because we do talk transfers and stuff quite a bit on here. Do you think at some point the club will have to smash its wage structure to attract players in the future? Steve Middlemas. What do you reckon, Keith?
I think that the fact that we bring in top end players like Botman and Bruno, you bring them in on deals, and let's suppose, and I'm just going to give you some numbers, let's suppose they've brought in 100 grand a week. When they do what Botman and Bruno has done, then wages will naturally go up. And Newcastle will do things with them players to tie them down and to stop other clubs with bigger wage structures take them away from us. So your wage structure is going to climb up. But what Newcastle's commercial arm seem intent on doing, which is very wise, is making sure that they've got all the sponsorship deals that fund that kind of increase in salary. So they'll try and cap the salary level, which I'm told at the minute is 125 or less, and they'll try and cap that to the point where they've got the revenues coming in. But the risk is quite. This week there was an article out which said Newcastle, Fenerbahce, and Aston Villa are all bidding for Eden Hazard, and he was on £384,000 a week. Seriously, I just don't see it happening. I think he's had his better days. I think it would be like the Ronaldo deal, cracking players, great players, but not now. And I don't think Eden Hazard would be the kind of player we needed for our high press game. So I don't see it happening. But I think if he came in, which is your question, what would happen? Well, I was going on record to say there'd be 6 people would knock his door the next day demanding wage rises. And you couldn't get them because you'd be putting, suppose you give them all 100,000 a week extra, you'd be putting 600,000 on your wage bill every week, which is a phenomenal amount of money. So for me, I think the performances of the big players we bring in will see the wage level naturally rise. I think by next summer, our top end wage cap might be at 200 million, which is a big jump from 125. But I see Newcastle passing on the Frankie de Jongs, who cost 470,000 a week. The Ronaldos, 600,000 a week. I just don't see Newcastle making that jump. I think if they'd had a different manager, Eddie Howe, and I'll name some, if they'd had a Conte, if they'd had I think even Emery, if he took the job, I think he'd have gone after players, demanded support and backing for players who come those wage packages. Remember, Wijnaldum was a PSG on 220,000 a week. He went for a transfer this year and he's gone to 250. And I would say he's a good player, but I don't see he's worth 2 Brunos or 2 Botmans. So I think Newcastle's doing it right. I'd say they're working pragmatically to let the wage bill creep, but I think they'll make sure that the commercial sponsorships will dwarf the amount of wages going out in salaries, which will make us always fluent and they'll make us always trade solvently. There's a lot of clubs in football now are insolvent.
Steve?
It's a difficult one. I know exactly what she's saying. I think there's probably more chance. Eventually, it will. Eventually it will have to happen. But I think it's gonna. I think there's more opportunity commercially from a business perspective for Newcastle to look at the squad and to incentivize the players they've got, and to put in commercial deals with sponsors that also provide that incentivization. For example, let's say you turned around to a sponsor and say, you sponsor us, we win the FA Cup, or we get into the Champions League. That's going to cost you. It's going to cost $5,000 for every player that's in the squad for a year. So we're going to give them all £5,000 increase. They're contracted to that as part of your deal. That works out at like £6.5 million. So for every £5,000 that you would want to increase the squad's salary by £5,000, you would be looking at £6.5 million with that 25-man squad. It's when you suddenly start to roll the money up like that and you see the cost. So then you think, right, well, is it that, or do you want to risk that unsettling the players and unsettling the squad because somebody's getting something and somebody's not? You usually find within a certain level that certain players realise their worth and are quite happy with what you get, but you're always going to get the odd one or two who will demand within their contracts through their agents that they have to be matched. So somebody comes in, they've got to be matched. Apparently, Alan Shearer had a similar clause, or so it was rumoured. When Newcastle signed Michael Owen, he then had to have the same that Michael Owen was offered. I don't know whether it's true, but it was always a rumour that was spun around, and it's something that's happened at other clubs that we've heard of regularly. So it's very difficult, and this is where we talk about, will they do this? Will they do that? But we don't know what the finances are like behind the scenes and what the club can actually afford to do. And it's the success on the pitch will dictate who they get and how they want to smash their wage structure, and if they do want to smash it, or whether they look to incentivize players that come in and stick with a settled basic, and then additions based on, and let's say it was a Harry Kane, for example, based on goals that he can guarantee he was going to get. So he knows he's on a hiding to nothing because he can score goals for fun, no matter which club he's playing for. So there's all of those type of things that get thrown around. But I just find that we often talk about smashing wage structures, and it's a structure that we don't really know much about. We don't really know. Keith mentioned there, Newcastle's is hovering around the 120, 125 mark. It was only a couple of seasons ago that we were talking about it being at 75. And so it's really, really difficult a subject to just come out and go, yeah, definitely we've got to, or whatever, because we don't really know. We don't know what the financial impact will be on the club.
I think when you see Hudson-Odoi at Chelsea on 150, and that's been well publicised, and it's not being denied by the club, that tells you that lad's never done anything really. He's not been of any significance to Chelsea. He's never won them anything, and he's somebody they're trying to get out on loan because both managers don't fancy him. The last manager,
he's in Germany at the minute, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's with Dortmund, I think, somewhere like that.
But they're paying 50,000 his salary, and Chelsea are paying 100. But what they can't do, they can't offload him. They can't get anybody to buy him. But at 150,000 a week for a player that isn't going to make it at your club, that just shows where you've lost the plot. And doing that, that's how you see how the Barcelona, how the Real Madrid, and how the Spurs get in these kind of debt positions. It's just like you say. I mean, Conte is now saying, I'm not going to commit my future until you back us and buy the kind of players. And he's going to be wanting a couple of £80 million players this window, or I think you'll see him move. When you start doing that, and sort of, you're more or less saying the opposite, Eddie Howe. I can only manage if you give me these major people, major money. But it's risky, and to be £1.25 billion in debt in 2022 and not qualify for Champions League, and the ESL haven't crushed, you're risking the whole bankruptcy of your club. So that's the risk. So I think we will increase it as we have in the last. I think we have in the last year. I think the levels have gone up, but I think we'll be done with bonuses and things like that first until the commercial revenue is there.
Yeah, good stuff. I love that one that Norman's putting. He says, the whites of Colin Waldron's eyes seem to get bigger as Super Mac carried him on his back towards me behind the goal at Hillsborough. What a semi. A little bit before my time. Obviously, I've done a lot of shows with Malcolm and heard those stories. But we've got to have Bernie Slavin on the show as well last night. A little surprise for Malcolm and for Gibbo. It was good to reunite two of the three legends. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. Okay, next up is the DI Met. The day I met, we'll ask you to send in photographs of you meeting people from Newcastle United. Thanks to Jennifer Spencer. Just made my day. Bumped into Jacob Murphy. What a super nice guy. He took the time to say hello and let us have a photo with him. Jennifer, lovely. And Steve can concur because he got on very well with him when he was out in Saudi. Top guy. Anyone's got any photographs, please send them in the usual way. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Just shout me up on any of those and send me in your photograph. Okay, Ray, thanks for your donation earlier on, Ray, and it was great to meet you at the Concert Dunsig game last Monday. He says, can the lads give their opinion on where Eddie Howe rates in the managers that they have seen? That's a great question, Ray. Second behind Keegan for me in managers that I've seen. I think he's just edged Bobby Robson for me. And that's an honest opinion. I still, I have a harken back to KK's team. That, maybe could you ever eclipse that? I'm not sure. And I think in conversations that I've had with people, my reasoning is very simple. To see Keegan as a player, to witness Keegan as a player, to witness him in a black and white shirt in a promotion season, and all that he did in 83, 84, which is still my favorite team. And then come back 7 years later after playing golf and not doing anything, other than, hit a golf ball around and spend time with his family, to come back to save us from relegation, not from the Championship or the second division it was known, but from the third division for the first time in our history, with no experience, was phenomenal. And the turnaround in the following season is akin to what Eddie Howe has done, keeping Newcastle in the Premier League and then making them a Premier League force. The comparisons are there for all to see. But for me, KK, because of his philosophy, because of the attacking football that we played, because of the personality and the pull that he had in bringing in big names, persuading players who didn't want to move north, and just getting bigger and better. And I guess as well for having the balls to stand up against the owners when they're trying to move the goalposts, which not many managers would do to protect his own dignity, but to protect his own standing. I didn't see that as a selfish act. I saw that as one, even on reflection, as a one which ultimately, was for the better of the club or the worse of the club. You know what I mean? And in the sense that the club would have to learn its own lessons and learn them a harsh way. And that's what's happened. And I still think at some point KK will be at the ground in all his glory. You know what I mean? He'll come back, he'll come along, he'll watch a game, and you know, I think we'll still have that day at some point, Ray. But that's my answer. He's second in the managers that I've seen. In the history of the club, he's still behind Joe Harvey, because Joe Harvey did so much at Newcastle United as a player and as a manager. And, you know, Joe Harvey eclipses Keegan because of what he did. 51, 52, 55, and then, you know, 69, 74. The guy was immense. Mr. Newcastle. You know, I know they're called Stan Seymour that, but he was Mr. Newcastle. And I guess, you know, that's my view. Keith, what's yours?
You picked. I mean, my first manager was Joe Harvey, and so, you know, my first centre forward was Wyn Davis, and you know, when you go back to them days, it was last time we won silverware. So he rightfully has got to maintain that place. He's got to be listed as the best manager we've ever had, because he's the last one to win silverware. But Joe Harvey was a special man, and he dominated the dressing room in a way that someone like Alex Ferguson did. He had massive respect from his players. I'm sure Malcolm would tell you that he was very much a boss. You know, and Joe Harvey was a great player, but he was a no-nonsense character, and we never had issues watching Newcastle from managers to players until the kind of Gordon Lee, Richard Dennis kind of era, and that's when it was like Coronation Street. Come back in the time, and then you get Keegan and your Robson, who have got to be in the top four, and the most magical person we've ever had at Newcastle is Bobby Robson. You know, he's probably the most iconic, most magical man that ever graced football in England, in my book. You know, I think he tops Alf Ramsey, Matt Busby's. You know, I think the only man in football that's topped with the same kind of warmth is probably Shankly. But Bobby Robson was so special. But for me, Keegan's always been my hero. Keegan's always been just everything for the reasons Steve just mentioned. He scored a goal on his debut on my 21st birthday. Met him loads of times, and he was just Mr. Magic, Mr. Everything. And to come second under Keegan was probably better than come first under other people. So you're talking putting people into a great area. And right now, I've got to bow and say, well, I've got Joe Harvey number 1, Keegan number 2, and Robson number 3. And right now, today, I've got to say that I've got to put Howe number 4 behind them because of what they achieved over a longer period of time. But I've got to tell you, I think that Eddie Howe might be. I always thought Rafa Benitez worked like a dog and worked great hours and left no stone unturned. This fella we've got now is to me surpassing that. He's uncanny in his ability. I tell you what, in press conferences, he's unbelievable how he conducts himself, and he has that likability factor, and he just sort of says the right thing. He praised Arsenal on Tuesday night when Arsenal didn't praise him. I mean, they were top of the league. They were part of the Big Six. They were part of the cartel. They were the team that's won lots of silverware in the last 20 years. Newcastle are the new boys who were nothing since 1955. So why couldn't Arteta have a touch of class and just turn around and say, wow, what a team Newcastle are? Because Pep Guardiola's done that. He said Newcastle's something special. But when you get people like Klopp who just fall from grace, I mean, he must be the most despised top 6 manager now just for his behaviour. Surely Arteta's losing the trick when he's not doing that. And I honestly think Eddie Howe is going to go to number 1. I think he'll do it within 2 years. I think he'll pass Robson, Keegan, and Joe Harvey, and I think it'll be on silverware. You know, and I think that in the next 2 years he'll probably win 2 pieces of silverware. Let's suppose he hasn't. Let's suppose it's 3 or 4 years. I bet he's getting closer and closer and closer. And there's one thing I've never been more confident. Eddie Howe will bring silverware at Newcastle, and knowing the job will take away until he's done that. So he's brilliant, but he hasn't had time. It's a bit like comparing this side with Keegan's side. Is we haven't had the money to buy the Ginolas and the Ferdinands and the Shearers yet. We haven't gone out and bought 2 biggest strikers in England. And if this side that Eddie Howe's got had been given the same kind of, I don't know, some of it was careless spending, but we'd have had Harry Kane in last season or the start of this season. And if you think if Harry Kane came tomorrow, what difference it would make? If every game you started with this Newcastle side and Kane was up front, you just think, shit, we're going to score, we're going to win. Because Kane would, Johnny Allen said, he said, if we could get Kane, we would win games that we currently draw. Kane would be worth 10 points a season here, just on games that we've drawn. He scores goals out of nothing. So for me, Eddie Howe is getting the number 1, but right now he's number 4.
Okay, Steve?
It's an interesting... It's a really interesting question, and it's one of those where, for me, it ebbs and flows, and it ebbs and flows between Joe Harvey and Kevin Keegan. Joe Harvey, because similar to Keegan, he was my first manager that I could remember. He got to a cup final I never thought Newcastle would ever get to, and I was just a young lad. And I just thought that, that Newcastle was something special and we were going to carry on to be something special. Somebody put up there that the fans drove them out. They did. The fans did drive. And I think that the reason that the fans drove them out is because round about that time, other clubs were going for tracksuit managers, young managers that were coming into the game. You saw the likes of Joe Mercer leaving Man City and being overtaken by Malcolm Allison. You had Cloughy coming into the game, and then you at the same time you saw Shankly leave after the cup final. And I think Newcastle fans at that particular time thought that Joe was too old. He was only in his mid-50s, even or not. He looked about 70, didn't he, when he left? He was 70 when he passed away. But for me, yes, he won a cup. But then when you move into your teens, late teens, and then early 20s, and then sort of Keegan came and the club was on its knees, completely on its knees. They'd never really recovered from that moment that Harvey left, and we went through this, not even a transition. We just slipped and slipped and slipped. Went through some ridiculous managers, and then Keegan came, as you say, and there was, as a player, shone a light, made it so exciting as a footballer that really made people like Beardsley and Waddle blossom. And then when he came back as a manager in what was then our desperate time of need, and as you say, 8 years not even working in football, and to come back, save us, and then to build what, for me, and I agree, Steve, exactly with you, that 93, 94, 95 era up 96, Keegan was building something really, really special. And the club was moving, the club was changing, the club was evolving. And it just made it so exciting. I didn't get that same excitement, possibly because we'd already had the excitement. I didn't get that same excitement under Robson. But again, and Robson was hounded out by a combination of a certain section of fans and the board. And so if I was going to say, where does Eddie Howe sit? He's right behind the three of them. Which order I would put them in, it would probably chop and change between conversations, depending on how many pints I'd had in the bar with you lot. But he's getting there. He's getting there. He's very lucky, though, in so much as that the club's evolving and it's given him the chance to make it appear that there's something special coming along the track. and it's working on the pitch. We've got all this. We've got harmony behind the scenes now that none of those managers really benefited from. It was different in Harvey's day, because the way that the board structure was. But I don't think Sir Bobby Robson ever got the backing of the board that he was entitled to, and I don't think the respect was there. I think even from day one, I think there were certain members of the board felt as though he was too old for the job at that particular time. But he did very well. He saved Shearer's career, no question about that. So Eddie's he's coming up on the rails. He's getting there. There's a furlong to go, and we're coming up on the rails. And by the end of this season, who knows? He might be past that winning post and pushing ahead of those three.
If he got the backing, and don't get us wrong, the only reason he's not getting the back is FFP and the EPL and the corrupt cartel. That's the only reason these owners aren't. They can't give him the back. But if he could have been, if there was no FFP, there's nothing certain me that would be writing him a check out to go and get the likes of Harry Kane. And if Eddie Howe had Eddie Kane, he wouldn't silverware this year. Fact.
Mark Bayer says, I think if this conversation had taken place on Wednesday's show, were you drunk, Mark? He says, when you were all drunk, you'd have had Joe Kinnear as number one. Yeah, we had a good day out on Wednesday, Mark, not Tuesday, son. Come on. If you're going to have a go, get it right. Alan says, spot on, Steve Hasty. Joe, to give him credit, was tired. Don't forget, Harvey'd been manager for 10 to 12 years. Lo and behold, we got Gordon Lee. What a disaster. And again, yeah, spot on with Robson. Captain Keithart says he's only been here for just over a year, and we're classing him up there with KK and Sir Bobby, which is true. It does say a hell of a lot. Julie's on, first time she's been on. I did do a little tribute on Wednesday night's show. Not that me and Steve and Mitch would remember, but I did do this. And just a shout out to Dave Harrison's family. He's never far from our thoughts. We lost Dave this time last year, and the guy was a living legend, part of the NUFC Matters community, and sorely missed. And this time of year is never a good time of year to lose anybody, but it always seems, in the winter that it's harder. But our thoughts are with Dave Harrison's family and Chris's family. The anniversary, of course, coming up as well for Chris. And while we're on about people passing away, just a little thought to Gianluca Vialli's family as well, a living legend of the game. Absolute gentleman, it has to be said. I mean, that kind of player who, regularly scores against you. You usually can't stand them when you're on the terraces. But there was just something about Vialli. He was world class and a top, world class player, but a world class man, on the side of the pitch and in the media as well. So, another sad passing today. Okay, it is time for Keith to get his gas mask ready and get into the lookalikes. In the last couple of weeks, it's been quite quiet on the Steve Hasty front.
Not anymore.
Ooh, you are awful, Steve. That was sent by somebody anonymous who got that for their birthday, saying Steve Hasty's on birthday cards now. Albert says he's saying out.
Yeah, saying out, Albert. He's saying out anyway.
I had this one from Andrew Harbert. He says, just when Indiana Jones looked in trouble, up popped Steve Hasty to help.
Yeah. Always.
Which one, Andrew? Both of them.
No.
Have you noticed something? Everybody who's got long hair that's old, it's always white. It's never like
Steve Hasty's, according to that one. This was a good one. Steve Hasty looking like at Brentford. I've got to be honest, I did see him, but I didn't have time to get my phone out. It's the guy on the left, by the way, everybody. And this one, sitting in a restaurant, says Mark Byers in Arkansas, and in comes Steve Hasty. Christ, he hasn't half put on some creme over Christmas. You get about when you're not doing the days.
Can I ask a question? When we do this show? Steve Hasty, have you got your hair fastened up at the back?
Have I got what?
Have you got it fastened up at the back?
No.
Because when you come out, it always looks longer. When you come out.
If you didn't watch Wednesday's show, you will have missed me, Steve, and Mitch talking a little bit of gibberish. We still got the show done, as consummate professionals do. This one, heavy night, lads. That's what we looked like on Wednesday night when we finished the show. To be honest, just relief.
It's the Malverno, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. It was definitely the Malverno. This one from Lee. He says, Steve, no one told me that Steve Hasty did wrestling back in the 80s. I love the shades, mate. I'm wondering if those on the top left are you, me, and Stu Penman. And is the big guy in the middle Mitch and Burra Mag in the picture as well?
I'm wearing Mitch's Speedos as well.
That's a hell of a find, Lee. It's a hell of a find. I have to deny all knowledge of that photograph being taken. This one says, great to see that Steve Hasty was at Southampton versus Forest last night.
God, I have never had a beard in my life either. Where they're coming from, I don't know.
John Allen says, here's one of Steve Hasty.
This is a mate as well. I think he's a mate.
He does it all professional as well when he's taking the mick, doesn't he? Sam Chipperfield, never far from your thoughts, I bet, Steve, when you're throwing darts.
That's
right. He says, Steve Hasty, the chav. And this one from Albert. He says, unwanted Christmas presents, looking for a good home. Keith, any room at yours, Keith? For Steve Hasty lookalike number 1. Steve Hasty lookalike number 2. Steve Hasty lookalike number 3.
Getting closer now.
And Steve Hasty lookalike 4.
We're getting there now.
Rita Roxley, as you know, always apologizes, Steve.
Yeah, always apologizes. Apologizes, then
sends them in. This one from Peter Guy. Steve Hasty strutting his stuff on the night out. This one was a personal favorite. Steve Hasty putting his bin out. Thank you, Stephen Moore. A new face for Steve Hasty lookalikes. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. And it does actually look like Steve Hasty, that one. So thanks for that. All right. This one, Tune lookalike, Geordie Dentist as a champ kid from the film Anchorman.
Yeah, that's a great film, by the way.
A little bit like Mitch.
Yeah.
Lookalike for next week, Nobby off Grimsby and Bradley Wiggins.
Yes.
Yep. Very good. Very good. Who's the guy with a cap on the right? I see him at every home game. And then a few comments saying it was me. It's definitely not me. Just to put your minds at rest. Bungle in the 70s and Bungle in the 80s was very good. And Jill Towers, who we had on last week, 1970s Bungle versus 2022 Bungle.
Very clever. Very clever.
Max and Paddy, prison guard, lookalike. Must be Keith.
Oh, it's you.
Oh, it's me. Right.
It's got your beard.
And this is from Tom Dixon, Martin O'Neill and Alexis Taylor. Very good. Very good. He sent this one in as well. Mikel Sylvester and a potato.
That looks more like Steve Griff, that.
And John Arnold Riesler and Ray Mears.
Aye, that's good. That's good.
This one. This was in response to that Dutch player who came on with noise cancelling headphones on, which was a bit bizarre, but got a few of these in. And this one from Mark, very clever,
very subtle. That Mark, yeah,
I like it, Mark. I like it. Very
brilliant.
Good, very good.
Yeah.
Definitely goats there as well. Wayne Rooney and Shrek. Been done before. It was an original photo. And this one, Gerwin Price, the day after the night before. And Captain Black, actually from Captain Scarlet, not Stingray, as I said earlier, but very good. That very good. That was a spot on. Tune lookalike, Alice Cooper.
Crap me a river.
And we've already had that. That was an tweet of the week. This one, Gibbo kept this one quiet. A major input on Saturday Night Fever.
Yes, hey,
very good.
That, yeah,
excellent. Here, this one, Jurgen Klopp and the guy who played Jeffrey Dahmer. This one from Paul, Bruno's uncle and Anthony McPartlin.
How many uncles has Bruno got?
I know. Very
As many as he has dads that turn up at the match.
very good one. Look alike this week for Rita as well. Arteta and Ted Bundy.
Yeah, good.
This one from Ugly Camel, Terry Stone and Keith Patterson.
Who's Terry Stone like?
Did Rise of the Foot Soldier.
One of Steve's mates.
He
I
is.
see. It's good because I just get compared to pop stars and actors, me like.
You do. This is a better one. Stephen Kennedy, Keith look alike, Morph. That was brilliant timing as well. I just get compared to look alike film stars, etc.
At least famous. At least he's famous.
Well, he's famous. Classic. That is very like, you know. Someone needs to tell Sam Smith that Kenneth from Benidorm was not a fashion icon.
That's true. Yes.
Not quite a look-alike he sent in. Just one that I found on the internet. Gerwin Price again. This time looking like a Cyberman.
Oh yeah.
Last couple, he's still fuming about that. I'd love it if Mikel had slipped on his arse running down the touchline. Love it, says Barry Shaw. Keegan and Eddie Howe getting compared to each other. Okay, last couple. First one, number 2. Paul Cannell and Buck Dharma of Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah, very good.
That's excellent.
Very good. Yeah, very good.
Didn't quite get there. This was me winner this week. Gary Oldman's character in Hannibal and Joe Biden. He scrubs up well.
That's more insulting to Joe Biden than Steve's dogs.
It's excellent, that. But in fact, it looks a bit like Steve Hasty.
No, it doesn't.
A little bit.
You see it blowing it down.
It's got the hair. Got the hair anyway. All right. Get your 2 lookalikes over. All right, it's time to look at the FA Cup, I guess, and you know, a lot of people asking, you know, what we're going to do tomorrow. You know, do we go strong? Eddie Howe was asked exactly the same yesterday, and he said he would look at how things go in training. You know, and you know, from his perspective, the FA Cup is very, very important. You know, and you know, obviously he's aware that he's got 3 big games in a week. He's got the game away at Sheffield Wednesday tomorrow. Then he's got the game against Leicester in the quarterfinals on Tuesday, and it'll be horses for courses. He'll make decisions, but he said it's very important also to try and give some players a chance to stake a claim to get in the team, but he doesn't want the team losing the rhythm that they've found either. So yeah, it is a balancing act. Also, Keith, he praised Sheffield Wednesday, said they were an experienced team, that they were having an outstanding season. They play a nice style of football. They mix it up with a bit of physicality and a bit of skill. He praised the manager, Darren, saying he'd done a good job, and he says they've got momentum. He says, which we know only too well is a powerful thing. Our quality needs to show to win the game tomorrow. So what are you expecting tomorrow? Is it a game, finally, for your man, and I will call him your man, ASM, to get a start and to show us what he can do tomorrow?
The answer is yes. But tomorrow, the reason that the FA or the EPL or whoever choose have put this game on television is because there's a potential banana skin. And I don't know if you cast your mind back earlier this season in some of the earlier cup matches. We put sides out and there were easy win games, and like we were scratching through or getting thrown penalties. It's a risk. It's a huge risk. So for me, I think the people he'll be looking at tomorrow that could feature, I think ESM's nailed on. I think he will start, and I think he'll be told to go and show them how good you are. And to be fair, he's capable because if he's playing in a game like that and he knows that he needs to get back in the side, he needs to get back that form, he's capable of just taking 3 or 4 people on and scoring. That's the power of the man. So I think he'll play. But more worryingly, and I'm not worried much of these people, I think you might see Dubravka in, who looked rusty when he played his 2 games at Man United, albeit I think he's a good keeper. I think you'll see Lascelles come back at centre half. I think you'll see possibly Anderson, if he's fit, playing, starting the game. I think you could see Ryan Fraser start. I think you could see Murphy start. And I think you could even see young Lewis start, fullback. Manquillo could get a game. my fear is we play too many of that crowd, and I've just mentioned the 8 there, and you know, I hope if he starts and leaves the Brunos on the bench, on the Wilsons, I hope he leaves them on the bench and doesn't take them out the squad, because there'd be nothing more embarrassing than going to Sheffield Wednesday, who are in the what I call the 3rd division, and knocked us out the FA Cup first time round, because you just heard a guy there that's just said he thinks we could win the FA Cup this year, and you know, any cup would be great. Carabao Cup would be awesome. That's probably the best chance we've got. But the FA Cup has some magic to it, and you know, going to Wembley in April, May to watch Newcastle in an FA Cup final is well, it's like nothing else before. I'm not the luckiest person, but I've been all the cup finals in '74 and League Cup '76, and the UEFA, the whole lot, and we just got battered. So what I don't want to do is I don't want the displeasure of getting knocked out of the FA Cup in the first round of Sheffield Wednesday. And they are a good side. I mean, they are in my book a championship side, and they'll be playing their absolute best 11, and they'll be running the tits off. And you know, we've really got to make sure that we're up for it. And I know you say all these players are capable substitutes. I think they are in the right numbers. So I think you put 3 of them on or 4 of them on, then I think you've got a chance. But put too many of them on, I think we could be in trouble.
Steve, he's going to have to change it and mix it around. You know, he's not going to underestimate Sheffield Wednesday. We know that for certain. But it's a fine balancing act, isn't it? And the fact that he said today that he's got to find that balance. He's got to find the right balance. He's wary of, you know, players getting fatigued, both mentally and physically. And he's also got to give those players an opportunity who are on the periphery, an opportunity to show what they can do and you know, make sure they can hit the ground running if they're called upon in the Premier League. Yeah,
absolutely. And this is where we've got a big game on Tuesday night. Tuesday, isn't it? Next Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday. Yeah.
So we've got a big game there, you know. I mean, that could push us into a semi-final. And I think there's that on his mind. I thought that Willis, for example, I thought he ran his socks off on the other evening, but he went down with cramp, and I thought he looked as though he needed a bit of a break. So it's players like that I think will move out. I think he'll rest Bruno, and I think he'll rest Joe Linton. I wouldn't be surprised to see Richie playing. I wouldn't be surprised to see Anderson getting a run out. And I think up front you can see Wood and ESM. I know that a lot of people will go Wood, but you know what? I think the lad puts the heart and soul into the game, and I know that people complain about his finishing, and that he's off the pace. But I think rather than, especially when Wilson's been out with a virus for, you know, a few games, and he didn't come back in tip-top condition from the World Cup. So I can see those changes. I can see Dubravka in goal to get a run out. The question, I suppose, for both, if he makes a goalkeeping change, whether it was Dubravka or Darlow, or if he decided to bring Karius in or Gillespie, the only question mark out of any of those changes would be that player's then cup tied, and if they are, any of those are going to be moved out during the transfer window, but staying in the UK. I could see Dubravka, for example, if he was moving on, going to Europe. There's plenty of clubs out in Europe who are looking for goalkeepers, but I think I've looked at the back four and I've gone Lascelles, Botman, Trippier, Byrne. I think that's the four at the back. I know what you're saying about Lewis. He probably does need a run out, but whether he gives him a run out tomorrow or not, I'm not too certain. I think he's never. You know, he hasn't been named in squads, or even when even when he played over in Saudi Arabia and he came on, I couldn't decide whether he was a player who was struggling because he hadn't played for so long, or there was just confidence has gone, or what. He didn't look the same player as he was when he first came. It's a cup. We want to move on to fourth round the cup. We're playing Sheffield Wednesday and they'll want to come at us. And mentally we've just got to be strong, and that's why I think the back four comes into its own, other than Lascelles making the change and giving Shaw a bit of a break after he was away in the World Cup as well. So that's my thinking and my rationale.
Interesting point you both make about Dubravka. I mean, he's come back to the club, and I Like Coffee says, will Dubravka be playing? What happens to Karius? I mean, it is a strange situation. Craig Lee says if Dubs plays, we can't flog him. And Eddie Howe did say today, we haven't watched him a great deal, but what we have seen is impressive. And yes, he's fit and he's available for selection if required. So Keith, it does sound as if Dubravka is going to potentially stay. Maybe he's been given another chance. What's your take?
For me, if there's any chance of them going for sale or sell them, and that's the plan, then I'd play Karius and go all day. And I wouldn't. Steve just mentioned Gillespie, not a chance. He made me nervous when he was in Saudi, and I wouldn't play Darlow either, because if we're going to start looking for a good number 2 for Pope, it is either Dubs or it's Karius, because the other two haven't got it. They're not the number 2s that we need. So there's 2 good kids. We've got 2 really good goalkeeper kids coming through, and I think you've got Pope, 1 keeper, and then these kids, and out of those keepers, it's either Karius or Dubravka. I think tomorrow's naming of the goalkeeper, if it's not Pope, will tell us everything, because people say that the biggest chance of Dubravka in this country is to go to Leicester, and they're not going to want a cup tie goalkeeper in the FA Cup. They're going to want him free. So if there's any legs in that, you would think he'd play Karius. But I say that because the paper's full of, Dubravka's going to get his chance and they're going to bring him back in. If we go into next season with Pope and Dubravka as our number 1, number 2 goalie, I'll be happy, because they're both good enough. It's just a shame it's taken a saunter down to Man United to get his head straight. But apparently all accounts say his wife didn't settle and he ever wanted to come back. But I'm not bothered about that. I'm just bothered about how they perform. And I think if Dubravka is number 2 or 1, I wouldn't worry, because him and Pope can certainly keep that place going. I think what I worry about is when Steve, you see a great stage, you see Byrne, Botman, Lascelles and Trippier. My fear is the rest Trippier and they stick Manquillo on, and then the rest, the rest Byrne, and put Lewis on. You set it with Dubravka, Lewis, Manquillo, and then you've got Botman and Lascelles next to him. Lascelles has always got a mistake in him, and whilst he's a good guy at the club, he's not reserve centre half because he's in the top 2 or 3, because he's not. And Botman, as good as he is, won't be able to have half the impact if he's surrounded by 3 what I call reserve players. So I'm not mincing the words. I'm a fan. I just want to get through this next round, get the next draw. So I want them to make sure there's enough of our golden squad on there to get us through. Because the other thing is, when you start getting replays and extra time, all this dragging on, that distracts you as well. So I would like to go down there and get a job done. And I've always been a believer in start your good players and bring them off when you've got a result, rather than let a game get out of your reach and start bringing people on like Bruno's and Wilson's and all the rest, which seems to be the policy.
Yeah, there's a bit of confusion in the chat about Karius. He's still at the club. The last comment that Eddie Howe made on Karius was in last week's press conference, where he said that there hadn't been a decision made yet and talks were ongoing. So, there is still a chance, potentially. I think tomorrow will tell us a lot. If Dubravka is on the bench or selected tomorrow, then I think we know that that's going to be him here till the end of the season at least. If Dubravka isn't on the bench tomorrow, then I would say there's potential for a deal to be done. So it'll be as simple as that. Carey is still a player at Newcastle, but you know, let's wait and see what happens. Me and Steve and Neil were discussing the other day potentially that it could have been a little bit of gamesmanship. You know, look, this is how much we rate the kid. We've stuck him on the bench. He could have ended up playing the other night if there'd been, you know, an injury to Pope. So maybe they are trying to do a deal behind the scenes. Maybe that was them saying we rate him. That's why we've got, you know, we've put him straight on the number two position in the goalkeepers, and we'll wait and see. None of us really know. I do just want to, before I ask you about Dubravka, I'll make it official now, because obviously nobody has, you know, nobody likes to say anything until you see the family say it. Mitch has put a tweet up as we've been on air. I'll read his tweet. He just says, as I boarded the flight back to Dubai today, I took this picture. It's a picture of the wing of the plane with a rainbow over the top of it. And he says, little did I know, at almost the same time, my dear mum slipped away holding George's hand, peacefully and painlessly. Released from the cage of Alzheimer's, I'm mid-flight now, contemplating landing in a world forever changed. Please, if your mum is around, message her, ring her, tell her you love her, and if you can spare a thought for my amazing dad tonight, I'd appreciate it. Rest in peace, mum. Yeah, George, I know you're in the chat, or you have been in the chat, mate. Our condolences are with you, mate. And, you know, it goes without saying that me, Steve, Keith are here if you need us, mate. You know, you've got our phone numbers. Don't think, hesitate to ringing us at any time of night, mate, because we're here for you, buddy. And just give us a shout. And as for, you know, as for Neil, it's hard. It's what I went through myself in May last year. And, you know, I make no excuse for me and Steve and, you know, Mitch going out the other day. It was fate that dragged us together. He managed to get some time over here. We went out and, you know, we had a good drink. He'd been to see his mum for the last time, and it was quite an emotional experience for him, but a fulfilling one. He got a chance to say goodbye to his mum, like I did, like many people didn't get a chance to do during COVID. And I know that Neil's thankful for that, but it's going to be a tough time for Neil. We'll give him his time. I'm sure he'll find his own way, like I did, of dealing with it. And again, he knows he's got a good network of supporting us lads around him, but he also knows that he's got you guys in the chat, who I know some of you follow him on Twitter. You know, a little message to him as he's in the air would probably not go amiss. But as I say, our thoughts with the lads in their time. And God bless you, Marjorie. I never met you personally, but I got to see you many times in the green room on this show. And we know you're in a better place. So God bless her. But Steve, I'm sure you want to say a few words, mate.
Yeah. Lovely lady. Yeah. She was just perfect when you met her. She always made you feel welcome. I spoke to Zara early on, and Zara said she remembers when they were doing We Are the Geordies and they went to George's house, and Margie said, I'll make you some cake, some scones. And she said it was a typical mum. You got the scone and you got like a slab of butter that was about that thick on the top, and it was oozing through the nice warm scone, and she was insisting on you eating it and this type of thing. She always made you welcome. She always had a smile on her face. Went with George and Neil to a few events, especially at the university, where she was, and she was just a joy to be in the company of. A typical mum. That's all I can say. A typical mum.
Lovely tribute.
Can I just say so quickly that 2 games ago I saw George, and I used to meet him usually usually round the food bank area, and I met him 2 games ago, and he was, I think it was before he had a problem with his eye, and he just stood there and talked about Marjorie as though I'd met her loads of times, and I hadn't, but you felt as though you had met her, because he was sitting there, he was telling us what she's doing. And I said to Neil this week, as he said, you know, how your dad replaces that, I'll never know, because he's such a warm fella. And I think tonight, you know, Neil, you know, he's going through what Steve Wright's gone through, which I did at 35-year-old. Your mum's the most important person in your life, because you never ever in your life, you'll never ever stop. When they die, you're given all the memories, but what you never do is you never get over the hurt, not ever. My dad was 18-year-old. I was 18-year-old. My dad died. He was only 52, and I miss him today. And people lose their dads, but your mother is especially. She's the one that brought you, and when it goes, you're not put into words. But for me, I get exactly what it feels like to still want to see your mum and still think, God, if only my mother was here. That's what us blokes do when we're weak. Yeah. But for George, it's his world. Neil has a successful career, and George would insist that he got back to work and got back home and got on with his life. But for George, it was his existence, and I hope he does. When he was at a year to the takeover day on the 7th of October, I sat with him in the Irish Club and talked to him, and he's just the warmest, nicest man in the Newcastle envelope. He's like a father to us all. And the first game after the takeover, he had us in tears. I stood and cried openly. There's a photograph. Somebody, he stood there bubbling, thinking, I hope nobody's watching. And someone gets a photograph and posts it. And I was just stood with tears running down. And all he said was, he just said, I just want to shake your hand. You've done more than any Newcastle fan. And I thought, God, for George Mitchell, who to us is an icon. But for him, by God, you know what I mean? It's cruel. It's as though that if you reinvented this world again, you'd have a deal where, when you got past 80, if one of you was bad, you both go together. Because it's a very, very hard thing to do for an aged person to get over such a loss. And my thoughts are with him, with Neil, with all the family. God bless you all.
Yeah. Thanks for all the messages in the chat as well. I'm sure when Neil watches it back and George, they will appreciate it as well. Dubravka, Steve, just a quick one on Dubravka from you, because we've got a bit to fill in the last 15 minutes. It's a strange one, isn't it? Especially with his stock has dropped a lot within the Newcastle United fan base, because a lot of people feel some of the stuff that he was attributed to him, was a little bit off key. People feel a little bit let down. I prefer to look at the performances he put in as a goalkeeper, to be fair, than what was maybe misquoted in the press. I think the guy's been a legend at Newcastle. I think he's played a huge part in keeping us up so that we could go on this wonderful run now with Eddie Howe. I think he deserves a second chance. I think he earned it.
Yeah, I'm very much in that camp, Steve. Goalkeepers are a different breed, aren't they? And then you've got to realise that the goalkeeper, he's competing against one other person in the squad, primarily. There's one place up for grabs. You can be a fullback who can, you might be able to play on both sides. You're a midfielder. You've got a choice of 2, 3, possibly 3 positions. Up front, there's at least 2 strikers. You've got injuries coming. Goalkeepers very rarely get injured as well, so goalkeepers go on a run. And I mean, just look at Shea Given and compare that to what happened there with I've forgotten his name now. You know what I mean? Yes, Steve Harper. You know what I mean? Harper sat on the bench for like 10 years. It wasn't that he was happy to sit on the bench. It was just he couldn't get a game. Shea was outstanding and went on runs of playing 100, 150 consecutive games, that type of thing. And from the day Dubravka came in, he grabbed that number 1 jersey, came in on loan, I think, if my memory serves me right, then got a permanent deal, and he just made that number 1 jersey his own. So it must be very, very difficult to suddenly be in a situation, because he had picked up a couple of injuries over the intervening season. But then for a new manager, and then the new manager had to make a decision to bring in a top-class goalkeeper and replace him. And, maybe it was just a reaction. Maybe Man United were looking and Newcastle said to him, we can't guarantee your game. We've got Carl, who who's been your number 2, so we can afford to let you go for a season if you want. We'll never know how the conversation went. But he had an opportunity to go where there was the potential at the time for the state to claim as the number 1 goalkeeper, because we all know what Man United are like. You never know whether De Gea is signing another 5-year contract or whether he's going to Real Madrid. So there was always that, especially with them bringing in a new manager as well. So he took the opportunity. It hasn't worked out. For all that I've heard, he's requested to come back. He asked for the deal, for the loan deal to be ended. He wanted to come back to Newcastle. I don't think it's because he's got with a view to another deal. You know, I think Frank Chipper is from. We all know what Frank was up to when whoever Frank Chipper is saying what he said. But I don't think there was ever that there was he was coming because he wanted to go to somewhere else. But now that he's made himself available, who knows? But you know what? If it comes to Saturday, or if it even Tuesday night, supposing Pope plays tomorrow and pulls a hamstring, or lands on his shoulder and is injured, I would have no worries about Dubravka coming in and staking a claim and being in the as the number one goalkeeper for a period of time until Pope was fit, and then for the two of them to fight out. I would no problem with that as a supporter. It's the nature of football, and I think if we get into that tribalistic sort of, I did this, he's huffed where all, then I think we've got to realise there's a much bigger picture. There's a private picture, a personal picture, and a professional picture that involves all, and comes into all the decisions that gets made. As far as a player, whether he's staying at the club, wants to stay at a club, is forced out of a club, or gets an opportunity to do something for a period of time away from his hometown club or his home club, if you like. So I just say now he's a Newcastle goalkeeper, Newcastle player. He's in the squad, and we'll get behind him.
Steve, I agree with both of you on that. By the way, Dubravka, and I remember that I thought he was outstanding. And my question's just simple: why did he bother going? Why did he ever think that being number 2 to De Gea give him a better chance to get in that team than being number 2 to a lad that hadn't proven himself at Newcastle? And there was every chance that Nick Pope would have a mare or would have a bad game, and then Dubravka would have the gloves for the next so many weeks. And when he knew what was happening in Newcastle, and he stayed with that team that struggled and at times saved us, he was brilliant. I just don't get why he made the decision. And when he went, there was, his social media was a lot of bullying Man United, which is where he was working. But I just thought that I've seen a lot of people leave clubs and just leave that, be more, passive in what you send out. And that's social media. That's not press, misquoting people. But when we had Foster and Krull at the same time, there was big decisions to be made. And ultimately, you might say the decision was wrong. A lot of people would say Foster's gone on and done a lot more than Krull's done. But then we had Given and Harper, and you can look back. I think we've got riches there. And a while ago, I said, I hope we go and sign some good kids. Apparently, we've done it. We've got a kid from Scotland who's supposed to be exceptional. He's made his name in the under-21s. And we've got another young that's supposed to be brilliant. So we're supposed to have the coverage behind them. For me, I think it's the middle area. I'm just in a single fan, but I'm not. What I watched in Saudi was one game, but I didn't get comfort out watching Gillespie. I'm very nervous. Dalot always makes me nervous. And so I think it's this number 2 shirt, and I think it'll be decided between Dubravka and Karius. And to be fair, I'm not bothered which one it is. I'm not bothered which one it is coming through. Hold on, I haven't got a patch on the eye. I'm going to be it. I've got a bloody fringe.
It's a cross between Steve Hasty and Keith Patterson.
Do you know what the good bit is? It's another movie star.
I knew you would see the positives. I knew you'd see the positives in it.
A bit like Morph.
A bit like Morph. It's a classic, that. All right, as we've had a bit of humour on here, as we always do, but we do put one man in charge of it, and it's Elliot Slater. And Elliot says, having regained consciousness after a car accident, the doctor's trying to convince me that I'm actually a Swedish guy and I've lost my memory. Does he think I was born yesterday? Fantastic, Elliot. Love that. Love that.
Announced born as well.
It is. Newcastle United away to Sheffield Wednesday tomorrow. And as always, we have a little bit of build-up from our two resident experts. First up, it is Toon Stato.
Newcastle heading to the third round of the FA Cup, 15 games unbeaten, still too short of the club's record, which is 17, back from 2009-2010 season in the Championship. And we have only one defeat in 21 games so far. What is very peculiar is that since the Wolverhampton game back in August, no team has scored against Newcastle in the league and in the cup in the first half. This is 16 games in a row now without a goal conceded in the first half. Having said that, Nick Pope and Newcastle have registered 6 consecutive clean sheets, which is a first for the club since March-April 1982, back in Division 2 at the time. Nick Pope has gone a total of 542 minutes without conceding a goal, and out of his 20 appearances for the Max, he has 12 clean sheets. We have played Sheffield Wednesday 6 times in the FA Cup, and we have progressed 5 out of the 6 times. The only time that Wednesday went through was back in 1966 when they went on to reach the final, which they lost against Everton. Newcastle doesn't have a win against Sheffield Wednesday in the last 4 games in all competitions. They did the double over us in the Championship in 16-17. Also, we drew back in 2010 in the league, and they beat us in 2015 in the League Cup at St. James's Park. Let's see if the guys can extend their unbeaten record tomorrow, and let's wish them luck.
And as always, thank you to Andre for his Toon stats. Over to Scunny Mag now. If you're going to Sheffield Wednesday, he'll let you know where you can go, where you can get in, and how to get there.
Hi folks, Paul here with your away day guide to Sheffield Wednesday, Hillsborough. Apparently I'm getting some excellent reviews saying I sound like a snooker commentator. Thank you very much. I think that's a good thing. Maybe not. So Steve said I should jazz things up, so... For those of you watching in black and white, the pink is just next to the blue. If you know, you know. Anyway, we'll crack on. For those driving, the ground is situated to the north of the city centre in the suburbs. There's quite a lot of good parking options available. There's a fair bit of street parking. Another popular option for parking is dropping in at Meadowhall, the nearest bit to the train station that you can get. It's free parking, but it is about a 35-minute tram ride to the ground. If you want to be more central, if you're staying over or anything like that, there is a city centre car park that I like to use. It's a multi-storey NCP. It's in Hartshead Square, and it's just behind the Wetherspoons pub. There's a hotel just the other side as well. Your postcode for that is Sierra 1 to Echo Lima, and your what 3 words for the entrance is Scarf, Scared, Shift. If you're coming in by train, many of you won't be, there is a strike on Saturday, but if you're parking near the train station, your closest pub will be the Howard, just across the road. The postcode is Sierra 1 to Lima Whiskey, and your what 3 words is Salt State Ruler. A little more into the city centre from there is the Banker's Draft, a large Wetherspoons pub across 2 floors right outside the Castle Square tram stop, which is dead handy for running up to the ground. It'll take about 15, maybe 20 minutes to get to the ground from there. You want to be heading for Middlewood. The price is around about £3 for a day saver ticket, or was last time I was in Sheffield. So the postcode for the Banker's Draft is Sierra 1 to Golf Hotel, and your what 3 words is Items Fell Early. Once you get up closer to the ground, or if you come in and park slightly north of the ground, there's a pub called The Railway. The postcode is Sierra 6 1 Lima Papa. Your what 3 words is Cute Linen Door. Once you're ready to head up to the ground, you want to be at the Leppings Lane end. If you've gone to the railway beforehand, you'll come in that way anyway. Your what 3 words for the away end, which is on the north corner of the ground, we're in the sort of northwest stand in the upper level, is Flops Boot Swim. And your postcode for the stadium, if you're just going to head there and try and park in the area, is Sierra 6 1 Sierra Whiskey. Enjoy the game, safe journey. And that's me done.
Classic, absolute classic. Honestly, that was brilliant, Scunny Mag. Yeah, his volume is quiet. We're getting loads of people going. He's like whispering Bob from the old grey whistle test before my time, like Andrew, you liar. Sean says volume's gone again. Seems to happen every time Scunny's on, can't he? I think subtitles an option in the future. Is Scunny Mag related to whispering Ted Lowe? Only joking. He is the football whisperer, says Toon 2020. Jules says, I turn my TV up so much when he's on, it makes us jump when his bit finishes.
He's I tell you something, when we went to Arsenal, his stuff is spot on, like, so.
He's great, man. He's great.
Because I didn't realise that, like, I don't know, you go to pubs, but with it getting off, what's the, it's a Finsbury Park, I think, you get off at the tube station.
Yeah,
and we walked straight through from there, and it was amazing how many pubs it had signs up, big signs. And I think that when you go to Newcastle, if you're coming out to the train station, I think you've got all them pubs down by the train station with the away fans in, and you come, you've got the old Wetherspoons, then you've got all the gate, and Newcastle Arms, Rosie's, Strawberry, the whole lot. Just how we in, and that it's quite surprising. We 7 pubs we couldn't get into, and but his stuff, you're thinking, well, he didn't, and he sure enough, it's his 2 pubs. And he said there's only 2 pubs to away fans. So yeah. I think Sheffield, from memory, is far more friendly. I think you'll get in loads of bars. And there's a good club up the top of the hill and all. There's Workman's Club there, which is really good.
I'm just laughing. David Cook is asking what 3 words are. Well, he's got a book called The Away Day Guide, Scunny Mag. Follow him on Twitter. That's what 3 words are, and it becomes apparent when you get his book. So you must get his book.
But does he not know what 3 words means? Has he not?
He didn't understand. Stephen Hooken goes, subtitles are available at Arse Salt Babies.
If you haven't got what 3 words, you can just get on your mobile, go on and just download the app for what 3 words. And all it does every I think it's every 2 square yards in the world has got 3 words. So if you put them in your phone on that app, it'll actually walk you to the pub. You turn left, turn right, straight in. It's like better than SatNav. So if you haven't got what 3 words, just download.
And what he's done with his book is he's put the Away Day Guides in a book form, and he kindly came to the Dog and Parrot one game, showed me the book, and I said, look, why don't you jump on the show, record something, send it in. So that's how it started. But I've got good mates in Scunthorpe. There's a few Scunny Mags down there, and my very first fanzine was in partnership with Steve Cross, the mighty Quinn, and he was a Scunthorpe lad. Scunthorpe are in dire straits. We're actually saying Keegan, it would be nice if Keegan went and did something for them, because they could go out of business. It's that bad at this moment in time. But that's enough of that. Got to finish the show. Keith, prediction for tomorrow and a prediction for Tuesday as well, mate.
Tomorrow 3-0. And Tuesday 2-0.
Okay, Steve.
Tomorrow 2-0. Tuesday 2-1.
Okay, brilliant stuff. Great chat tonight, and we had literally 600 watching throughout that whole show. Absolutely brilliant. There's still 500 people in the chat. Please hit the little thumb underneath on your way out. 176 likes, 600 watching. Let's get that up before you leave. Julie, as always. This little segment of the show is your favourite. It's over to the Troll of the Week. And I put Happy New Year to somebody, and I received this. Thanks, Hovel. Thanks. I'm not even going to read it out. It's there for everybody to see in black and white. Another one on the Twitter banned list. That's just from me saying Happy New Year. Unbelievable, Jeff. Unbelievable. But that is your Troll of the Week for this week. And a big thank you to George Hayes, who was the winning bidder once again on a food bank t-shirt. £200 into the food bank, already paid from George. Thanks very much for that, mate. Honestly, means a hell of a lot to us, but more to the people of Newcastle who need the food bank evermore. Big thanks to Keith. Big thanks to Steve. Have a great weekend, lads, and enjoy the football.
Take care, Neil and George.
Take care, Neil and George. God bless them. A big thank you to all our sponsors, as always. Thanks to Skips and Bins, telephone 0800 25 45 25 3, email inquiries at skipsandbins.com, and our website skipsandbins.com. Easy, contract free, and pay as you go waste collection. Thanks to Garden of Healing Dispensaries, CBD hemp and cannabinoid specialists. You can find them at thegohd.com. Thanks to Mr. Vicky's sauces, which are handmade in Cumbria, and you can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. If you want to make an order, give them a call on 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Thanks to Blowhole Breweries, you can get a selection of beers, and the cans are in the design of the old Newcastle United entertainers strips. Blowholebrewery.co.uk. Thanks to Melly's Carpets and Beds, laying our reputation, one recommendation at a time. The best quality around at the cheapest prices. Melly's Beds and Carpets.co.uk. Email sales@mellysbedsandcarpets.co.uk or give Melly a call on 01670 632 216. And thanks to United Group Travel Limited, UK coach holidays in Morpeth, 01670 362 460 or mobile 07957 141 654. Graham, your driver, Beverly answering your calls and looking after you on your tour. Some great deals coming up there. Get yourself onto the website to check them out. Thanks also to Media Arts, who do all of our videos and help us with the technological side of things. And thanks to qtechshop.co.uk, the makers of pool tables and snooker tables in Wallsend, Newcastle, and the guys who run our website, NUFCmatters.com. If you want to subscribe to the channel, then hit the subscribe button below. Hit the thumb up, which is the like button, which does us a big favour with the algorithm. And click share. Share it to Newcastle United Facebook groups or Twitter accounts or your own social media to help our community grow. And if you want to join the channel, hit the join button. And for as little as $1.99 a month, you can get some members-only videos and chances to win some fantastic prizes. We're also available as a podcast on iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, and the rest. Don't forget as well that we do events through NUFC Matters. And this one is the next event coming up, Friday the 24th of February, an evening with Newcastle United legend Steve Howie. Friday the 24th of February, Tyneside Irish Centre, and tickets are available at £50 from newcastlelegends.com. If you also go onto Voucher and search for the event, you can pick up a bargain on there. Don't forget, we also support the food bank on this channel. www.nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk is where you can find the Matchday Bucket. You can make a virtual donation to the Matchday Bucket 365 days of the year to keep helping the food bank in Newcastle.